love can be the most beautiful feeling or the cruelest teacher. Picture a young girl who gave her guardian an RV worth millions, hoping it would be their ticket to explore the world together. Instead, she watched as he took another woman camping in it. But that's not even the most heartbreaking part of their story. When 12-year-old Leona lost her father, Sincere stepped in as her guardian angel at just 22. He became her everything: father figure, big brother, protector. For years, their bond seemed unbreakable. Until her 19th birthday, when she finally understood her true feelings. Standing outside his office with a ring, ready to confess her love, she overheard words that shattered her world. "Leona and I have a pure, nurturing relationship. There's no romantic feeling at all." But fate wasn't done with them yet. In a shocking twist, years later, the very man who rejected her love came crawling back, begging for a second chance. By then, everything had changed. Through heartbreak, betrayal, and near-death experiences, this story will take you on an emotional roller coaster that proves sometimes the people closest to us can hurt us the most. If you want to discover how Leona found her way to true love despite all odds, and what ultimately happened between her and Sincere, stay with us for this incredible journey. Don't forget to like this video if you've ever experienced unrequited love. Subscribe to hear more gripping stories like this one, and share it with someone who needs to know that sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads you to something even better. Let me tell you about the Unimog RV I gave to Sincere. People called it the Noah's Ark of the Apocalypse. That gift represented how special Sincere was in my life, though our story started long before that. When I was just 12, my world shattered when my father died in a car crash. While my uncles circled like vultures fighting over the inheritance, Sincere stepped in as my guardian angel. He wasn't just my lawyer, he became my protector. At only 22, Sincere took on the enormous responsibility of raising me. He created a home where there was only emptiness before. He wore many hats in my life: father figure, big brother, teacher, and closest friend. He cooked meals that warmed not just my stomach but my soul, bought clothes that made me feel cared for, and helped me navigate both homework and life's big questions. As his career grew and his salary increased, he made sure my life improved too. On my 18th birthday, Sincere gave me an incredible gift: the deed to our duplex villa. "I want you to feel at home," he said, not knowing how much I already did. That moment filled me with joy and hope, dreaming of building a future together. But everything changed when I turned 19, when my heart finally put a name to what I was feeling: love. I thought I could surprise him on his birthday with a ring and my confession. Instead, life surprised me. Standing outside his office, ring clutched in my trembling hand, I heard words that froze my blood. "Leona and I have a pure, nurturing relationship. There's no romantic feeling at all." He was talking to his assistant, dismissing rumors about us, calling himself just a raising-type uncle. My excited steps died in that hallway, replaced by cold sweat and shivers. When I finally did confess, his response cut deep. Turning a family member into a lover makes me sick. The pain doubled when he later took another woman camping in that same Unimog. I tried to move on, to open my heart to others. But then, in life's cruel irony, he came back, asking for the very love he'd once rejected. By then, I'd done exactly what he'd asked, retreated into being just family. I told him with quiet firmness, "You were right before. Turning family into lovers is disgusting. Let's not speak of it again." When tragedy struck at age 12 with my father's car accident, Sincere emerged as my guardian angel. He didn't just help me face my greedy uncles. He handled my father's funeral with grace and dignity. I'll never forget the moment he gripped my shoulders, his eyes meeting mine with fierce determination. "Your father supported me when I was a struggling student," he declared. "Now it's my turn to repay him. As long as I have food on my table, you'll never go hungry." Those words, and the tears they brought to my eyes, taught me early on how rare true gratitude is in a world full of opportunists. Though my second aunt received legal custody, she struggled to care for me. Sincere, seeing her difficulties, offered a solution that brought relief to us both. He would take me in. Looking back now, I realize that's when my dependence on him began, though he never once made me feel like a burden. He created a life for me that exceeded even his own standard of living. The finest clothes appeared in my closet, shoes and socks of the best quality materialized as if by magic. No matter how demanding his work became, a warm meal always waited for me after school. He turned what could have been a house of sorrow into a home filled with care. Years passed, and finally, the bitter inheritance lawsuit over my father's estate concluded. Though the vultures had picked away much of what should have been mine, I still received a substantial sum. But Sincere, ever protective, never let me touch a penny of it. He continued providing everything, ensuring I wanted for nothing. So how could he sit there now, claiming there were no romantic feelings between us? How dare he suggest my presence in his life had only brought troublesome rumors? I felt like I was clutching at sand, watching helplessly as it slipped through my fingers no matter how tightly I tried to hold on. Backed into an emotional corner like a wounded animal, I didn't have the luxury of time to nurse my hurt. I had to act. With desperate courage, I pounded on his office door, not waiting for permission before bursting inside. The scene before me felt like a knife to the heart. Sincere lounging comfortably in his executive chair, Scarlett sitting across from him, their easy rapport evident in the relaxed atmosphere. I must have looked wild in comparison, but Sincere's smile never faltered as he straightened in his chair. Scarlett, bless her perceptiveness, quietly excused herself with a knowing smile. My heart thundering in my chest, I approached Sincere with what I hoped was a casual smile. "Happy birthday," I managed to say, dropping to one knee and presenting the simple ring I'd chosen with such care. "I've been planning this for a long time," I added, my voice surprisingly steady despite my trembling hands. My heart was overflowing with love as I knelt there, pretending I hadn't overheard his conversation with Scarlett. I chose to be stubborn, to fight for what I wanted. "Will you be my boyfriend?" I asked, my eyes shining with hope, waiting for his answer. But Sincere's frown and surprised expression told me everything before he spoke a word. When he turned away, his embarrassment visible, I felt my heart shatter like glass hitting concrete. Before my tears could betray me, Sincere gently pulled me to my feet. "Silly girl," he said softly, his gentle voice somehow making everything worse. "You're at an age when you love to dream. You're just projecting your fantasy of love onto me." Each kind word felt like a dagger to my heart, transforming my confession into ashes. The drive home was torture. I sat rigid, my face a wooden mask, while Sincere's usual warmth had been replaced by an invisible wall. Though his eyes remained gentle, there was something new there, a barrier that screamed, "Keep away." The oppressive silence in the car made it hard to breathe, and I've never been so grateful to see our driveway. I escaped to my living room in our duplex villa, the one Sincere bought after his career took off. My private sanctuary, complete with its own bathroom and living space, felt more like a prison now. I sat on the sofa, still in shock, grief washing over me in waves. Sincere appeared with a glass of milk, hesitating at the doorway before approaching. His face was kind, but his voice carried a new coldness I'd never heard before. "I think you've made a mistake," he began, each word carefully chosen. "You're confusing dependency with love. You're young. Someday you'll meet someone who'll cherish you as much as I do, and then you'll understand that what you feel for me now is just an illusion." I stared at him in disbelief, my pain so visible it made him uncomfortable. He started pacing, his footsteps echoing in the painful silence. Finally, he stopped and delivered the final blow. You're still young. What you need isn't me. It's time. As I watched him walk away, his back straight and resolute, my tears finally broke free. They fell silently, each one carrying a piece of my broken heart. The next morning I woke early while Sincere still slept. I prepared breakfast for the first time, something I'd been practicing for weeks, planning to surprise him on his birthday. But like everything else lately, my timing was wrong. He'd mentioned having plans and wouldn't be home to taste it. Still, I couldn't help trying, couldn't stop myself from showing him what he meant to me, even if he didn't want to see it. This section powerfully captures the pain of unrequited love and the particular anguish of being rejected by someone who knows you so well, yet sees you so differently from how you see them. The contrast between the narrator's hope and Sincere's gentle rejection creates a heartbreaking dynamic that many readers will relate to. That morning, knowing Sincere was celebrating his birthday with colleagues instead of me, I placed my carefully prepared breakfast on the table and watched the clock tick away. He still hadn't emerged from his room, and with school calling, I couldn't wait any longer. I rushed out, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. Being a local university student meant coming home each day, usually a blessing, but now it felt like a curse. Coming home that evening felt like walking into a tomb. The breakfast sat untouched, a silent rejection of my efforts. Sincere hadn't even picked up his chopsticks. He'd rather stay in bed all morning than face me. I collapsed onto the sofa, defeat weighing heavy on my shoulders. The housekeeper quietly cleared away my failed peace offering and began preparing dinner, the normal sounds of cooking somehow making everything worse. Then I heard the front door open. Sincere was home early, something that would have made my heart soar just days ago. Now it just made my stomach knot with anxiety. When he stepped inside, his face carried a darkness I'd never seen before. He couldn't even meet my questioning gaze. After a heavy sigh that seemed to echo through the room, he finally looked at me. "Leona," he said, his voice carrying finality. "I've been thinking. Living together like this, it's affecting both our reputations. You're growing up, becoming independent. You don't need me anymore. I should step back. Being around you constantly isn't good for either of us." The words hit like physical blows. "I came to pack my things," he added quickly. "Don't be sad. Our bond is special, unparalleled." Then he was moving, not even waiting for my response, leaving me frozen in place as he efficiently packed his life away. Even in this moment of chaos, his movements were precise and organized. Everything about him remained elegant and capable, just as he'd always been. I watched him, remembering how others described him, a fearsome presence in debates, a master of logic who could strip any argument to its core with just a few words. So many girls admired him, yet he'd always kept them at arm's length. I'd foolishly interpreted that as him waiting for me to grow up. Now I realized the bitter truth. I was no different from any other admirer, just another person he needed to keep at a distance. Before leaving, he glanced at me nervously, as if expecting me to make a scene. All he said was, "I'm leaving. Keep in touch." Then he was gone, taking his presence with him and leaving the rooms feeling hollow and strange. I closed my eyes against the wave of bitterness threatening to drown me. I somehow survived the next 2 days in a fog of grief. Then one evening, I came home to find Sincere had returned, and he'd brought his luggage with him. The sight stopped me in my tracks, my mind struggling to process what this might mean. My heart stopped when I saw Sincere standing there. He flashed that familiar smile, teasing, "Now I need you to take me in. I'm homeless, little girl. Time to test your conscience." I drank in the sight of him, those handsome features, straight nose, and tall frame that haunted my dreams. Something didn't add up, though. With all his properties, how could he possibly be homeless? Just as hope started to bubble up inside me, a shadow behind him took human form. "This is Scarlett, my colleague," Sincere explained casually. Her air conditioning broke down, and she has nowhere to go. She begged me for help. My current place is too small, and all my other properties are leased out. I thought we could stay here. My soaring hopes crashed back to earth, but I nodded, not trusting my voice to speak. Our once quiet house suddenly buzzed with new energy. At first, Scarlett seemed almost intimidated by Sincere, coming to me for everything she needed, asking me questions instead of bothering him. But like water wearing away stone, that distance between them slowly disappeared. She started spending time in the study with him, their work sessions stretching into long conversations over tea. Their laughter would drift through the house, each chuckle a small knife in my heart. Then came the day that changed everything. I'd made juice for everyone, and Scarlett accidentally picked up Sincere's cup. Before I could warn her that he'd already drunk from it, she took a sip. I watched, frozen, as she realized her mistake. She glanced at Sincere with guilty eyes, but instead of the strict boundary setting I expected, he just shook his head as she playfully stuck out her tongue. The casual intimacy of it all felt like a physical blow. With me, Sincere had always maintained crystal clear boundaries, never allowing even the smallest crossing of lines. Something as simple as sharing a cup had been unthinkable. Now this newcomer had effortlessly crossed into our sacred space, and I couldn't bear to watch. When Sincere was out, Scarlett would explore the house like a curious cat. One day, she discovered our photo album, a chronicle of years spent together, capturing moments from our travels across the country. Each image showed two people full of youth and dreams, unaware of how things would change. The album also contained pictures of my birthday gifts from Sincere through the years, tracking his journey from thoughtful, carefully chosen presents to expensive gestures that seemed to make up in price what they lacked in personal touch. One day, I walked into my yoga room to find Scarlett sitting there, surrounded by my memories. The box containing my album and gifts from Sincere, things I'd taken out to comfort myself after he left, lay carelessly opened, its contents scattered like fallen leaves. Before I could voice my anger at this invasion of privacy, Scarlett launched into an attack. "Leona, you're pathetic, always obsessing over love," she sneered. "At your age, I was already interning thanks to my father's connections. I was there, standing outside when you confessed to Sincere. My mother always said a girl should be reserved. How desperate must you be to chase after a man? Look at you, playing house like a little wife, trying to win sympathy with your pitiful act." Her words cut deep. At 19, barely out of my sheltered world, I didn't have the weapons to fight back against such worldly criticism. It reminded me of a recent incident at the mall. A cleaning lady had mocked me for splashing water on the sink, calling me unqualified, despite my decent appearance. I'd run away with tears in my eyes then, just as I wanted to now. That's the cruel thing about being young. You can laugh, play, and enjoy life, but you don't know how to defend yourself when the world turns harsh. Standing there, hearing Scarlett's venom, I felt the familiar sting of tears rising. Then Sincere appeared, like a guardian angel. His first concern was my tears. He leaned close until our foreheads touched, his gentle fingers wiping away my sadness as if I were made of glass. "Stop crying," he whispered softly. "You're not a child anymore." When he turned to Scarlett, his warmth vanished, replaced by Arctic cold. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "Did you come to someone else's house just to bully them?" Scarlett jumped up, fury etched on her face. "You're something else, Sincere," she spat. "Just live your life with your little green tea girl." She started throwing her things together, preparing to storm out. Surprisingly, Sincere made no move to stop her or even ask about her plans. He just held my arm, looking guilty but determined. That night, Scarlett moved to a hotel and took her bitterness to social media. Ambition doesn't depend on age, but some people never outgrow being fake, playing the fairy at such a young age, and some fools actually fall for it. Her words reached many in Sincere's circle, as I was well connected with his colleagues and friends. I could see everything unfold on social media through my connections in Sincere's circle. Scarlett's version of events, while technically true, twisted reality like a funhouse mirror. She painted me as a jealous teenager, threatened by any woman near Sincere, claiming I'd deliberately left out the box of memories for her to find, a calculated move to mark my territory. Though I might have faltered in our face-to-face confrontation, my thoughts crystallized in the quiet aftermath. I responded to her post with precise clarity. First, I pointed out her violation of privacy and ingratitude toward those who'd offered her shelter. Second, I addressed her criticism of my studies. My teachers actually worried I studied too much. Third, I defended my right to love openly at my age, refusing to be shamed for honest emotions. Finally, I noted the irony of her claims to independence while she publicly fought over a man. Sincere's support came swiftly. He liked each point I made, praising my maturity. "You've finally grown up," he said. "I'm relieved." But his praise only sparked my frustration. "If you hadn't let the wolf into our home," I shot back, "I wouldn't have needed to defend myself." Still, his loyalty in that moment warmed my heart. Then came the shock. Days later, Sincere brought Scarlett back, tugging at her sleeve like a child with a favorite toy, asking her to apologize. He wanted her to stay. For the first time, I looked at him with pure disappointment, and I saw him flinch under my gaze. He turned away uncomfortably, focusing instead on Scarlett. She offered a half-hearted apology. "Leona, it was just a misunderstanding. As an adult, I overthought things." Sincere looked at me expectantly, silently urging me to accept this peace offering. Instead, I walked away. The next morning, the house was quiet, just Sincere and me, like old times. He made breakfast, something I'd been longing for, but every bite felt wrong. Then he dropped the bomb. "The Unimog RV you gave me? I'm taking Scarlett camping this weekend. She's been doing great work, and I want to reward her." The crisp autumn air whispered of perfect camping weather, but those words from him only made my heart sink. That Unimog, our Noah's Ark of the Apocalypse as they called it in the RV world, stood as a testament to my feelings. Even secondhand at $2.8 million, it was my grandest gesture, my response to him giving me the house deed. In my dreams, I saw us traveling the world together in it, just the two of us. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. He was my shelter from life's storms, my own personal Noah's Ark. Tears began rolling down my cheeks before I could stop them. Sincere rushed over, his fingers gentle as he wiped them away. "Hey, why are you crying?" he asked softly. "If you don't want me to go, I won't. I'm just talking about it with you." I couldn't tell him the truth, so I manufactured a lie through trembling lips about Scarlett wanting my car. But then, my heart spoke before my mind could stop it. "Sincere, do my feelings mean nothing to you? This isn't just some schoolgirl crush. I really care about you." The change in his demeanor was instant and devastating. His hand dropped away as if burned, his face hardening into stone. "Don't taint our family bond," he said, his voice cold with disappointment. "Your confession disgusts me." He walked away without a backward glance, and by the next morning, he was gone, leaving only empty spaces where his belongings had been. I sat alone as day faded into night, clutching the house deed in my hands. The issue date mocked me, my birthday from the previous year. His gift of a home wasn't the romantic gesture I'd foolishly imagined. It was simply familial duty. Through social media, I watched their camping trip unfold like a perfect movie. Scarlett's updates showed golden autumn grass, crystal streams, and breathtaking sunsets. They looked picture-perfect together beside my Unimog, their happiness radiating through every photo. Lying in my bed, my mind tortured me with images of their joy, their laughter, their shared moments, their budding romance. The Noah's Ark I'd chosen with such care was no longer mine alone. All my heartfelt efforts had only served to bring happiness to someone else. When the first unexpected snow of the year fell, I found myself outside Sincere's new home. There they stood under the streetlight, Sincere and Scarlett, wrapped in each other's arms. Snowflakes drifted around them in the warm orange glow, like something from a fairy tale. The world held its breath in perfect stillness. You could almost hear each snowflake's whispered landing. As I watched them, my tears froze before they could fall, turning my heart to ice. Looking at them, I was forced to confront a painful truth. What made Scarlett so special? What made her different from me? Standing there in the snow, I realized how wrong I'd been. Scarlett wasn't particularly special. It could have been anyone, just never me. People say snow falls silently, but I heard something that night, the distinct sound of my heart shattering into pieces. The revelation came with Sincere's rare phone call. When I answered coldly, my tone seemed to throw him off balance, leaving him speechless for several moments. After an awkward cough, he struggled to deliver his news. He and Scarlett were together now. He wanted me to call her sister-in-law and invited me on a trip to strengthen our family bonds. I couldn't help but laugh, a hollow, bitter sound. I told him there was no need for future contact. Such situations only invited uncomfortable questions and suspicious glances. My mockery must have been too obvious because concern crept into his voice as he asked if I was feeling well. I responded with deliberate indifference, suggesting perhaps I should call her aunt instead of sister-in-law. My laughter grew sharper as Sincere could only respond with a helpless, "Leona." Despite my reservations, I agreed to join their trip. Sincere remained the closest person in my world, and I couldn't bring myself to refuse him. Like a drowning person clutching at a life ring, I held on to our connection even as it slowly sank beneath the waves. His charm remained undimmed, even if its reliability had faded. We arranged to meet at Fowl's Ends, a seaside resort kilometers away. The time between that cold winter day and the midsummer meeting felt like an eternity. During this period, I found myself alone with Scarlett, who deliberately showed me her phone conversations with Sincere. The timestamps revealed these exchanges happened during her stay at my home, right around our argument and her subsequent departure. The messages painted a devastating picture. Sincere had written, "Have you calmed down? You went too far that day. We agreed it was all fake, just for show to make that girl give up. How could you take it seriously?" He was referring to the incident when Scarlett had confronted me about my photos, criticizing and lecturing me. The conversation continued with Sincere defending his actions. "I meant well. When she gave you that ring on your birthday, I was outside the door. That girl has no sense of boundaries. She needed someone to teach her a lesson." Scarlett had responded diplomatically, suggesting they move past the argument, mentioning how they'd helped each other with accommodation and gifts. But the messages grew more intense. Scarlett accused Sincere of betrayal for liking my social media posts, claiming it hurt her deeply. Sincere's response revealed his conflicted feelings. "I asked you to help me make her see reality, not to hurt her." When Scarlett suggested giving up their scheme, Sincere firmly refused, though she eventually admitted her wrongdoing. Each word of their exchange felt like another crack in my already broken heart. The chat messages continued to reveal their scheme. "I beg you to keep helping me," pleaded Scarlett. But Sincere's response was firm. "No, I can't watch Leona make mistakes for my sake. I'm here to repay a debt of gratitude, not to bite the hand that feeds me." When Scarlett pressed him about repayment, suggesting their original arrangement wouldn't work, Sincere offered to meet any conditions. Then came Scarlett's bold move. "If I say I've fallen for you too, will you consider me?" Sincere's silence spoke volumes. His lack of rejection suggested consideration. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All this time, Sincere had orchestrated this elaborate plan to push me away. Even more painful was the realization that I had unwittingly played matchmaker, helping create the very romance that was breaking my heart. What Scarlett achieved so effortlessly had been forever out of my reach, and I had handed it to her myself. At the seafood buffet restaurant, our destination's famous eatery, Sincere demonstrated his usual thoughtfulness by getting the first round of food. Like always, he brought back fruits and condiments for both Scarlett and me. His tray also carried my favorite main dishes, a detail that didn't go unnoticed. When Scarlett and I returned from getting our food, we both brought dishes for Sincere, which he accepted with his characteristic warm smile. However, as I finished my first round and prepared to get more, I caught Scarlett giving Sincere a meaningful look. I noticed then that Sincere had finished everything I'd brought him, while Scarlett's offerings remained untouched. My plate of food from him was empty too. The realization of Scarlett's game made my blood boil. She was deliberately creating friction. Despite the simplicity of my relationship with Sincere over the years, we shared an unspoken understanding. Time had built something mountain-like between us, deep-rooted and imposing. I could see how this bond tormented other women like Scarlett, pressing into their hearts like thorns. It became crystal clear. It was time for me to bow out completely from Sincere's life. While he was getting more food, Scarlett and I were left alone at the table. I focused intently on peeling a conch, remembering the warning about its poisonous brain. Just then, something heavy splashed into Scarlett's soup across the table, sending hot oil onto my hand. The skin immediately turned angry red and began to swell. When I looked up in shock, Scarlett's face was a mask of apology. "Sorry, Leona," she said innocently. "I don't know how to peel a conch, and it just fell into the soup." Her words hung in the air, dripping with false sincerity, as my hand throbbed with pain. This wasn't just about a dropped conch. It was a clear message about territory and ownership, written in scalding oil on my skin. I met Scarlett's expectant gaze, knowing she wanted me to run crying to Sincere about my burned hand. Instead, I stood and walked past her, pausing only to pat her shoulder. "I'll handle this myself," I said quietly. "I won't tell Sincere, but try this again, and I'll repay you tenfold. Don't blame me for being rude then." She blinked up at me with practiced innocence. Since Sincere was so determined to push me away, I decided to help him achieve his wish. Whoever he chose to be with didn't matter anymore. We wouldn't have any future interactions anyway. Scarlett noticeably relaxed when she realized I truly wouldn't tell Sincere about the incident. The rest of the journey continued with less tension. Though my hand throbbed with a painful blister I had to drain, I found myself reluctantly tagging along as their third wheel. By the third day, they wanted to go swimming in the ocean. Scarlett, complaining about the crowds at the hotel beach, suggested we try the neighboring beach just over a small hill. The second beach was indeed quieter, almost eerily so. With my injured hand, I chose to rest on the sand, eventually drifting into an uneasy sleep. Sincere's urgent voice jolted me awake. His face was flushed with panic. "Leona, you're the strong swimmer. Please help Scarlett. Something's wrong." When I saw what was happening, my blood ran cold. Scarlett wasn't struggling or showing typical signs of drowning. Instead, she was being steadily pulled out to sea, despite wearing a flotation device. This wasn't normal. Even with her swimming ability and the safety float, she shouldn't be drifting like that. My face went rigid with fear as I recognized the danger. "Sincere, call the police immediately," I ordered. "I'm getting the hotel lifeguards. We can't help her. This is a rip current. Only professionals can handle this safely." But Sincere was already beyond reason. "There's no time," he shouted. "How will I face her parents if something happens to her?" Before I could stop him, he was reaching for a life preserver. I grabbed his arm, trying to hold him back. "Trust me, we can't save her. These currents are deadly." He fixed me with a look of deep disappointment and reproach before breaking free. With a resigned sigh, He grabbed a life preserver and plunged into the water. The current quickly caught him, and I watched in horror as he was pulled out, his arms waving desperately for help. The scene before me was a nightmare come to life. 2 people being dragged out to sea, and I was their only hope. Yet I knew the brutal truth about rip currents. They could claim multiple victims when would-be rescuers tried to help. My expertise as a swimmer was screaming at me about the danger, but my heart was breaking watching Sincere drift away. Watching Sincere drift farther into the dangerous waters, rational thought abandoned me. I grabbed the last pair of arm floats from the beach and plunged in after them. The moment the water hit me, regret flooded through my body. Fear had clouded my judgment, leading me to make the worst possible choice. Despite being a strong swimmer, I felt helpless against nature's raw power. The rip current pulled me relentlessly outward, making every attempt to swim toward them futile. As the current dragged me toward deeper waters, terror gripped my heart. The devastating consequences of my decision became crystal clear. Death had never felt so close before. Looking at the 2 distant figures bobbing in the waves, I finally understood the ancient wisdom. Compared to survival, everything else was meaningless. My youth flashed before my eyes, and the primal instinct to live took over. Through the fog of fear, a crucial memory surfaced: the survival technique for rip currents. Swimming parallel to the shore was the key. No matter how powerful, a rip current is just a narrow channel in the ocean's normal flow. With newfound clarity, I swam sideways along the coastline toward the hotel beach. Upon reaching safety, I staggered to the security guard, gasping out words about people caught in the current before collapsing onto the sand. Chaos erupted across the beach, but I no longer cared. Their fate was out of my hands now. I retreated to the hotel, wanting nothing more than to escape. I'd had enough of suffering for youthful foolishness. I couldn't bear another moment. My phone lay abandoned on the beach, so I approached the hotel receptionist with just my ID and bank card, requesting both a flight booking and a taxi. While waiting in the increasingly crowded hotel lobby, a sleek black taxi pulled up. I rushed in, aware of the driver's questioning stare at my disheveled appearance. "Please hurry," I urged. "There's a crisis unfolding here. The police and ambulances will arrive soon." Only then did he start driving. At our destination, I realized I couldn't pay the fare. As I fumbled in my pocket, my fingers brushed against the ring, the one I'd used to confess my feelings to Sincere. The irony wasn't lost on me. "The hotel can bill it to my room," I told the driver, my voice hollow with exhaustion and heartbreak. The ring in my pocket felt heavy with memories and mistakes. It represented not just a failed confession, but a chapter of my life that had nearly cost me everything in my desperate attempt to save someone who never wanted my help in the first place. "The ring should cover it, if not bill the hotel," I told the driver, handing over my last connection to Sincere. He gave me an odd look as I placed the ring down and walked away. I moved out of the villa soon after, and with no immediate dormitory available at school, I found a rental nearby. That's where Sincere found me one day while I was studying. He said he needed to talk, and though I suggested a coffee shop, he drove us to a lake instead. The twilight painted half the sky in darkness, while the other half still glowed with sunset. The fading light played across his features, making his expression even more unreadable than usual. The silence stretched between us like a living thing. Finally, he broke the tension. "Leona, I'm sorry. I endangered your life because of my ignorance. I'm just a boy from a remote area, sponsored by your father. You even taught me how to swim, but I didn't know anything about rip currents. Can you forgive me?" His voice cracked, and I was startled to see tears glistening on his face. Could I forgive him? The question echoed in my mind. What difference would it make either way? I had chosen to jump in after them. I needed to take responsibility for my own actions and learn from them. But deep down, a kernel of resentment remained. I couldn't forget that look in his eyes. Reproachful, contemptuous, disappointed. Like a deity passing judgment, his single glance had driven me to risk everything. Still, I didn't want to argue anymore. I was tired of the entanglement, tired of the emotions. I gave him a stiff nod, which only seemed to deepen his pain. "Don't force yourself to forgive me if you can't," he said, wiping his face. "Keep this debt in mind. I'll spend my life repaying it." He muttered to himself, "You warned me clearly. Why didn't I listen?" After another long silence, he continued with his confession. "I was never with Scarlett. It was all an act to convince you. She was just helping me, though sometimes she got too carried away and hurt you. That's my fault too, for letting it go too far. I came up with this stupid plan because I'm so clumsy with matters of the heart." His voice grew softer, more vulnerable. "Leona, I never imagined you'd go so far for me. I failed you completely. That day in the sea, my deepest wish was for your survival. My own fate seemed insignificant. Maybe it's my self-loathing, a product of my upbringing. Even with death so close." Each word fell like a stone into the still waters of my heart, creating ripples of understanding mixed with lingering pain. His confession painted a picture of a man trapped between gratitude and guilt, unable to handle the weight of my feelings. I sat there numb as Sincere's confessions washed over me. He'd never been this open before, sharing more heartfelt words in these moments than in all our years together. Yet I remained silent. There was nothing left to say between us. The time for words had long passed. He rubbed his forehead, collecting his thoughts before speaking formally. "Leona, while great kindness needs no thanks, proper etiquette must be observed." He produced 2 checks, one from Scarlett's family and another, surprisingly larger sum, from himself. I stared at them, momentarily stunned, before accepting them. As an orphan with modest inheritance, additional funds for my future wouldn't hurt. Though love's spiritual essence had evaporated, at least it could transform into something practical for my growth. "As a lawyer," I suggested, "you should know a gift like this needs an agreement." He immediately pulled one from his briefcase, clearly having anticipated this. I quickly photographed it with my phone as backup, then looked at him directly. "We're even now. Don't contact me again." He covered his eyes briefly, and when he revealed them, they were filled with sorrow. "No, I'll always be in your debt," I repeated firmly. "Then repay me by staying away," before stepping out of the car. I threw myself into my studies, applying for a tutoring program that would take me abroad for my final 2 years. During my remaining 6 months in China, I caught the attention of a boy who seemed perfect on paper. Wealthy family, handsome features, top computer science student with a promising future. Most impressively, despite his popularity, he remained steadfastly devoted to pursuing me. Given my love-starved background and the natural desires of youth, I found myself drawn to him. After my experience of loving completely and losing everything, I felt ready to try again, carrying no expectations or regrets. LA and I became a passionate couple, openly displaying our affection around campus. Then came the day I spotted him with his roommate, accompanied by Xiaozhen, a junior who'd been pursuing him. Something in their interaction made my heart sink, but I couldn't bring myself to approach them. Instead, I watched from a distance, an uncomfortable familiarity creeping over me as I recognized patterns I'd seen before. My relief at seeing Elias ignore his junior was short-lived. When Xiaozhen stumbled, Elias's hand shot out to catch her without even looking. As she teetered on the edge of tears, he snapped at her. "You're so useless! Who trips on flat ground? What else can you do?" I turned and walked away, my mind already wrestling with how to end things. Elias noticed my gradual withdrawal and simmered with barely contained anger. When I refused to attend his birthday party, his frustration finally boiled over. He spent hours waiting outside my building that night, drunk and desperate, only to receive a text. "Happy birthday," and happy breakup. Throughout it all, Xiaozhen hovered nearby, repeatedly tugging at his sleeve while he brushed her away, her tears flowing freely as he ignored her. Elias maintained his innocence, bewildered by my decision to leave. His roommate, more perceptive, questioned him. Leona seems more mature than us. Could she have noticed something? Elias turned slowly, realization dawning. If you were truly flawless, his roommate continued, no girl would leave you. In response, Elias posted a public declaration on the school's confession wall, proclaiming his devotion to his girlfriend and promising to maintain appropriate boundaries with all girls, especially Xiaozhen. Interestingly, Xiaozhen's tears dried up that same day. Soon after, another post rocketed to popularity, painting me as a serial homewrecker, complete with fabricated stories about Sincere and me, each more vicious than the last. I immediately contacted the police and began gathering evidence to defend myself. Then Elias appeared, looking haggard and unshaven, clutching a lawyer's letter. The defendant was Xiaozhen, and the prosecuting firm was Sincere's. Elias's expression was a mixture of guilt and desperation as he spoke. Xiaozhen framed you. It's been proven. But as fellow classmates, couldn't you show mercy? My mother always taught me to be forgiving. We shouldn't push people too far. My response was ice cold. Have you considered my position? What if I lacked the resources to clear my name? Should I carry this stigma forever? Elias mumbled uncomfortably. You wouldn't. You have the ability and powerful people behind you. His words hung in the air, acknowledging both my strength and the shadow of Sincere's protection that still lingered over me. Suddenly, Sincere's voice cut through the tension like a knife. I recorded everything you just said, he announced from behind me, his voice steady and controlled. I had my suspicions about Zhaozhen having an accomplice. Looks like I was right. Eli's face turned ghost white. No, you've got it wrong, he stammered, his words tumbling out in panic. I just heard things from other people. I was drunk on my birthday, said some stuff I shouldn't have, and Zhaozhen happened to overhear. His eyes darted around like a cornered animal. Sincere's voice turned to ice. Get out, and stay away from Liana, or you'll have me to deal with. Eli practically ran away, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Once he was gone, Sincere's face softened with sadness. Someone who truly loves you would never watch you being hurt and still defend the person hurting you. I nodded, feeling strangely calm. That's why I ended things with him so quickly. I noticed Sincere's eyes cloud over with something unspoken, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. He seemed to be fighting an internal battle before finally speaking. He doesn't deserve you. He's too young to understand what real love means. If it wasn't him, it would have been someone else, I said with a shrug, trying to sound indifferent. I saw Sincere flinch slightly, his usual composure cracking. Putting on my bravest smile, I added, I know the right person is out there waiting for me somewhere. Sincere's gaze locked onto mine with an intensity that made my heart skip. 1,000 unspoken words seemed to swim in those dark eyes. As I turned to leave, his hand shot out, grabbing my sleeve. Come home with me, he pleaded. I can give you everything you want. I won't let this chance slip away again. I jerked my arm free, my voice turning to frost. Chance? What chance? There's nothing left between us. Despair flickered across his face like a dying flame. I had only taken a few steps when he called out, Wait! He rushed toward me, his face flushed. After several deep breaths, as if gathering courage, he asked, What if I was wrong before? What if what I felt wasn't family affection but love? Before I could process his words, his lips were on mine. The sudden kiss left me frozen in shock. See? He said triumphantly, his eyes bright with hope. I kissed you without hesitation. I've always loved you. I just couldn't see it through our foster relationship. Is it too late? Disgusted, I wiped my lips roughly. This isn't just a mistake between us, Sincere. It's way beyond that. My cold stare hit him like a physical blow, making him stumble backward. I see you as family now. You know better than anyone how wrong it is to confuse family love with romance. Don't ever bring this up again. It's sickening. The color drained from his face as if I'd struck him, and he swayed on his feet like a tree in a storm. That was the last time I saw him. Soon after, I boarded a plane to study abroad, leaving everything behind. I didn't say goodbye to anyone, just bought a ticket and disappeared into my new life, hoping to find the beautiful scenery I'd been missing all these years. At the airport, Elias stood waiting, his figure looking smaller than I remembered. "Have you ever truly loved me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. A bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. Shouldn't I be asking you that question? The pain in his eyes deepened. What did I do wrong? I just want to understand. This time my laugh was genuine, almost gentle. You were just a lesson, Elias. Young girls need to fall in love with the wrong person to recognize the right one when they come along. With a final wave, I said goodbye, not just to him, but to my youth and homeland. When I landed, I found that Sincere had already prepared my new home. Every corner was meticulously arranged, eerily reminiscent of my old villa. But it didn't affect me. True separation isn't swayed by familiar surroundings. Sincere eagerly gave me the tour, his enthusiasm almost childlike, and I played along to keep the peace. That's when I noticed one of the guest rooms was already claimed, his clothes hanging in the closet, enough for every season. I froze. Hadn't I made myself clear before? Sincere cleared his throat nervously. "I thought you might need help adjusting to life here," he explained, avoiding my eyes. "Just until you get settled." I studied him, puzzled by this new, clingy version of him. What happened to the composed man I once knew? "I've given you everything. The house, the money," he mumbled, still not meeting my gaze. "Now I'm offering myself. Please don't push me away." Before I could process his words, he pulled me onto the bed, his eyes burning with an intensity that once would have made my heart race. The moment I'd dreamed of countless times was finally happening, but I felt nothing, just emptiness. I sat up abruptly, turning to face him. "You know what's ironic? All my feelings for you died that day on the beach," I said quietly. "I once loved you with such purity, but you trampled it until even God grew tired of watching. Let's stop this. Let's go back to being family and save what little dignity we have left." Ignoring his response, I left for school to complete my enrollment. But my words didn't deter him. When Christmas arrived, he showed up among my classmates, bearing an expensive gift. As the crowd whooped and whistled, I smiled sweetly and explained, "Oh, just a wealthy relative who enjoys playing Santa." My classmates begged for an introduction, and my smile grew wider, masking the complicated emotions beneath. The female students giggled in unison. "He doesn't believe in love? When he meets the right person, he'll want to marry right away." They scattered like leaves in the wind, leaving Sincere standing there awkwardly, clearly unsure how to handle the situation. During my college years, I threw myself into my studies, pursuing a double degree while also earning my accounting license in the Anglo-American system. Hard work paid off, and I landed a position at a prestigious financial institution. After 2 years, I transferred to Hong Kong, climbing the corporate ladder step by step. Throughout this time, Sincere would regularly update me about his family's pressure to get married. His messages always carried an unspoken question. I finally told him straight, "Don't wait for me. Nothing will come of it." At 35, he was a decade older than me, and I knew his traditional family from their remote hometown wouldn't accept him staying single forever. Yet he'd put his life on hold for years, waiting for something that would never happen. A year later, I reached a milestone in my career, leading my own team as a trust manager. Our first major task was an online investor recruitment meeting where I had to present to multiple industry titans, hoping to secure their investment in our products. I had prepared meticulously, but office politics reared its ugly head. My deputy, Chu Jing, wasn't content playing second fiddle. In a desperate grab for power, she stooped to an unprecedented low. After my presentation, during her speaking time, she suddenly turned to me with a venomous smile. "Leona, isn't it true that you once came between Lawyer Sincere and Miss Key? Don't you think being a homewrecker is morally reprehensible?" The old Leona might have crumbled under such a public attack, but I'd grown stronger. Without missing a beat, I pulled out my phone and displayed photos of the gratitude gifts from Scarlett's family, the gift contract and check clearly visible. "I believe I know my personal relationships better than you do," I stated, my voice steady and professional. "My conscience is clear, and my character speaks for itself. These are proofs of my integrity." I held my phone up to the live stream camera before turning to face Chu Jing directly. "I've heard interesting stories about your private life, Chu Jing. Are you really in any position to judge others?" "You're lying," she exploded, trying to lunge forward before colleagues restrained her. The live stream cut off abruptly in the chaos. Sitting in my office later, I knew my career at the company was effectively over. Even if I could prove my innocence, being involved in such a public scandal would make it impossible to regain the professional standing I'd worked so hard to achieve. Sometimes winning the battle means losing the war. Looking back, I could have stayed quiet, let the higher-ups handle it. But something inside me knew I had to stand up for myself. It wasn't just about personal pride, it was about professional integrity. Still, the company suspended me, citing my inability to manage the team. The irony wasn't lost on me. They assigned me a deputy they knew was trouble, then blamed me when everything exploded. Life really does have a twisted sense of humor. A message popped up from Sincere. "Lie low for now. Consider getting an MBA. It could be your comeback path." I replied with more confidence than I felt. "Don't worry about me. This is just a test of my resilience, and I'm stronger than you think." My mind wandered back to when Scarlett mocked me for being lovesick, but I stood by who I was then and who I am now. "I'm passionate about life and love," I had told her. "That's nothing to be ashamed of. But my career is just as much a part of me, and I won't give up either." "After what felt like forever," Sincere called. His voice cracked with emotion. "I never realized how deeply those events hurt you. I'm so sorry." The words tumbled out between quiet sobs. "There's nothing to apologize for," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "It's ancient history. My focus has always been on building my own life. Everything else is secondary." His soft crying continued over the line. "I was so wrong," he whispered. "Sometimes I think, if I'd only realized sooner, we could have been so happy together. Now you love me, and I love you, but we can never have each other. That's what hurts the most." After a heavy pause, he added, "I've stayed single all these years. Doesn't that prove how sincere I am? Can't you give us another chance?" I let out a weary sigh. "No, Sincere. I won't look back. Please let me go, and let yourself go too. Every time you bring up the past, it feels like I'm drowning. We need to move forward." The line went silent, heavy with unspoken words. To my surprise, the company reinstated me shortly after. A major investor had expressed interest in my financial products. When I learned I'd be meeting with Maxwell, a legendary figure in finance despite being only in his 30s, my nerves kicked in. My last presentation had ended in chaos, and Maxwell's reputation for being cold and unapproachable preceded him. I braced myself for a difficult meeting. To everyone's surprise, Maxwell kept the meeting simple, asking basic questions before signing the contract without any fuss. The whole thing went so smoothly that my boss and I were almost suspicious. Then came another surprise. My boss arranged a dinner, but only for Maxwell and me, not in some private club but at a prestigious Michelin-starred restaurant. When I learned it would be just the two of us, I was certain Maxwell would cancel. Yet there he was, right on time, seemingly unfazed by the intimate setting. As he ordered his meal, I finally had a chance to study him properly. His wheat-colored skin and sharp jawline gave him a striking appearance, and every gesture spoke of quiet confidence. His black suit fit him perfectly, adding an air of sophistication to his already commanding presence. Trying to break the silence while waiting for our food, I fell back on formalities. "Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Du. I'll work hard to meet everyone's expectations." It was painfully generic, but what else could I say to someone I barely knew? He responded by calmly pouring me tea, a surprisingly humble gesture from someone of his status. As I thanked him, he fixed his gaze on me. "I trust my judgment. Your performance during that product presentation was impressive." I nearly choked on my tea. Was he joking? That presentation had turned into a disaster. But his expression remained serious as he continued. "I saw how you handled a losing situation. You weren't afraid to take your enemy down with you. That kind of decisiveness, it's rare." I sat there stunned. Maxwell was a legend in our industry, and here he was praising me, a relative newcomer. "Thank you for being my mentor," I managed to say. "I feel like my luck is finally turning around." His smile transformed his whole face, warming his usually cold features like sunshine breaking through clouds. The evening seemed perfect until Chu Jing ambushed me outside the restaurant. "Still using men to get ahead, aren't you?" she sneered. "First Sincere, now Maxwell. Can't build a career on your own merits, but you sure know how to handle men." I was ready to walk away. I'd already weathered the storm. Why get dragged into more drama? But before I could move, Maxwell appeared beside me. His voice cut through the air like steel. "People like you," he addressed Chu Jing. "Petty people. They're always the most troublesome." Maxwell's voice carried a sharp edge as he continued addressing Chu Jing. "Reading more books probably wouldn't help someone like you. Let me be clear. Trying to tear others down won't lead to success. Take this as both advice and a warning. If you cause trouble again, I won't be so polite." The color drained from my former deputy's face. Her connections might be impressive, but they were nothing compared to Maxwell's influence. "Take my car," Maxwell told me, turning away from Chu Jing. In the safety of his vehicle, anxiety crept in. Would Maxwell think I was weak for not defending myself? Had Chu Jing's accusations about me relying on men struck a nerve? As if reading my thoughts, Maxwell spoke. "Society's push for absolute female independence is a trap," he said thoughtfully. "Regardless of gender, success comes from knowing how to leverage resources and coexist with others. Everything can be turned to your advantage." I nodded, letting his words sink in. Our professional relationship flourished. I helped him make substantial profits, and when I launched my second product, he invested heavily. His backing meant I never struggled to find buyers, and soon I became known as a rising star. Of course, rumors spread. People claimed my success came from his support. The elite business world, I discovered, wasn't so different from a small town. Everyone loved gossip. But remembering Maxwell's wisdom about leveraging relationships kept me grounded. I stayed focused, ignoring the whispers. When Sincere called, he always managed to steer the conversation toward Maxwell, no matter where it started. I refused to engage. Instead, I told him directly, "When you should have been in love, you wanted marriage. Now that it's time for marriage, you're chasing love. Stop being stubborn, Sincere. I look forward to meeting your future wife. I'll send a lovely wedding gift." Could I have been any clearer? The Spring Festival holiday hit me harder than expected. With nowhere to go, I found myself working late on New Year's Eve. As night fell, I left the office and walked through the eerily empty financial district. The usual bustling streets were deserted, making my loneliness feel even more acute. As I wandered aimlessly, a car horn broke through my thoughts. I turned to see Maxwell lowering his window, a rare smile softening his features. "If you're at loose ends, come celebrate at my place," he offered. Before I could decline, he added quietly, "I'm alone too." When Maxwell pulled something from his pocket, a ring, my brain short-circuited. Isn't this too sudden?" I stammered. My thoughts scattered like autumn leaves. Maxwell's response caught me completely off guard. "This ring already belongs to you," he said matter-of-factly. "I'm just returning it. Years ago, after you fled from that hotel, you jumped into my car thinking it was a taxi. You gave me this ring as payment. Don't you remember?" His voice softened, though I doubt you were thinking clearly that day. I sat there speechless. "You've kept it all this time?" "When I saw the news about a young hero jumping into the sea to save someone, I recognized you," he explained simply. How could I throw away something that belonged to such a person? Embarrassment washed over me in waves. Here I was, thinking he was proposing, when he was just returning my old ring. I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. "I'm so sorry," I mumbled. "I didn't recognize you." Words failed me as Maxwell burst into genuine laughter, a rare sound from him. This awkward moment marked the beginning of getting to know the real Maxwell, beyond his intimidating reputation. When he invited me to his birthday party, I was looking forward to it. But halfway there, my monthly visitor arrived with vengeful timing. I messaged him apologetically, explaining the situation. He asked for my location, probably suspecting an excuse, so I told him truthfully that I was nearly at his house. "Stay put," he instructed. "Pharmacies are scarce in this area. I'll get you medicine." Despite his instructions, I couldn't just wait around and started searching for a pharmacy myself. Maxwell found me quickly, clutching several types of painkillers. "Take these now," he urged, offering water. "The sooner you take them, the less you'll suffer." As the medicine began working its magic, a thought struck me. "What about your other guests? Why did you come yourself? You could have sent an assistant." Maxwell seemed to struggle with his words before finally admitting, "Actually, you're the only one I invited today. I arranged a yacht. I wanted to watch the stars at sea with you tonight." His words left me frozen. A mix of anxiety and anticipation swirled in my chest. Maxwell wasn't someone I could easily handle. He was too perceptive, too careful, too deliberate in his actions, and that made him dangerous to my carefully guarded heart. When I first met Maxwell, his striking looks and wealth were obvious. He could have had any number of young women with just a gesture. I remember feeling relieved back then. During my lowest point, I'd feared having to deal with predatory investors making inappropriate demands. Though our industry was generally professional, these things happened. His presence had felt like a shield. Now here he was, this reserved yet powerful man making his feelings known. It was flattering, but terrifying. "I'm too ordinary," I told him gently. "A country girl like me doesn't belong in your world. You should find someone more fairy-like for your yacht parties." His face fell, emotions showing clearly for the first time since I'd known him. "Okay," he said quietly, turning away. I watched him leave, took a few steps in the opposite direction, then found myself running. I circled back, cutting him off at the intersection. His eyes widened in surprise as I approached with a smile, taking his arm. "You know," I said, "maybe with some practice, I could become fairy-like too. Why give that chance to someone else?" His face lit up as he caught my free hand in his, leading me to his car. I wanted him to experience both loss and recovery, to value what we might build together. My past relationships had taught me something. Even with someone from a higher social sphere, you need to maintain some control. I wasn't fixated on a particular outcome, but I wanted to stay beside him for a while. Meeting someone unforgettable during the best years of your life, that's worthwhile enough. As for sincere, I once said he was like a mountain in my heart. But when everything around turns to desert, Even mountains weather away to dust. He came to my wedding looking worn and weary. When he saw me in my wedding dress, his attempt at a smile was more heartbreaking than tears. "You're beautiful," he managed to say. "I know," I replied softly. "All brides are beautiful." He turned away, seeming so fragile a breeze might scatter him. After a long pause, he asked, "Would you like me to walk you down the aisle?" Caught up in the wedding day chaos, I answered without thinking, "No need. We didn't practice it that way. The groom might not know how to handle it." He lowered his head, disappearing into himself like dust settling after a storm. I never saw when he left. Perhaps that's how it should be, letting each other fade into the vastness of the world. Those days of supporting each other through hardship can never return, but they shaped who we became. This touching story teaches us that sometimes the hardest goodbyes lead us to the most beautiful hellos. Leona's journey from a heartbroken young girl to a successful, confident woman wasn't easy. She had to learn that true love isn't about fixing someone's past mistakes or waiting for them to finally choose you. It's about finding someone who loves you from the start, without games or confusion. When Maxwell kept that simple ring all those years, it showed that real love notices the little things. Unlike Sincere, who only realized what he had after losing it, Maxwell valued Leona from their very first unexpected meeting. He saw her strength, not just her vulnerability. He chose her openly, not out of guilt or regret. As for Sincere watching Leona walk down the aisle to another man, it's a powerful reminder that timing is everything in love. Sometimes we realize our feelings too late, and all we can do is step aside and let the person we love find happiness with someone else. Remember, your first love doesn't have to be your last, and sometimes the people who help us grow aren't meant to stay forever. Leona's story shows us that it's okay to move on, to find new love, and to let go of what could have been for what's meant to be. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about love, loss, and finding yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their perfect love story might still be waiting around the corner. Until next time, keep believing in love. Just make sure it's the right kind of love.